Have you ever wondered why certain people always manage to drain your energy, even when you try to set boundaries? There's a brutal truth that most people don't want to accept. Toxic individuals don't disappear because you said something profound or eloquent to them. They walk away when they stop getting what they want from you. Mel Robbins, one of the leading experts on human behavior, discovered that there's a single strategy that can make toxic people literally evaporate from your life. And it's not about confrontation. It's not about revenge. It's not about dramatic emotional speeches. It's about a subtle but powerful shift in your posture that completely alters the dynamics of any problematic relationship. If you're tired of draining your energy, trying to deal with people who only take without giving anything back, subscribe to the channel now, because what you're about to discover in the next few minutes can transform not only your relationships, but your entire quality of life. The biggest mistake kind and empathetic people make is believing that the problem lies in a lack of proper communication. You've probably experienced this. You try to explain your needs clearly and respectfully. You try to be understanding of the other person's behavior, thinking that perhaps they just need to better understand the situation. You strive to be fair, to give the benefit of the doubt, to be patient even when your patience is at its limit. You invest time and emotional energy trying to make the person understand how their attitudes affect you and others around you. But here's the revelation that Mel Robbins shares, which goes against everything we've been taught about relationships. People with toxic behaviors don't walk away because they develop awareness of their negative impact. They walk away for a much simpler and more practical reason: lack of access to what they seek in you. When you remain emotionally available for unnecessary drama, unfounded conflicts, and subtle manipulations, you are inadvertently fueling the cycle you want to break. The reality is that while you offer emotional reaction, constant attention, and mental energy to these problematic interactions, you are providing exactly the fuel that keeps these behaviors active in your life. It's like trying to put out a fire by throwing gasoline on it, however well-intentioned your effort may be. Leave a comment saying, "I withdraw access," because this simple decision is the first step towards a complete transformation in the quality of your relationships. When you make this statement to yourself, you are establishing a new standard for how your energy will be invested from now on. Now let's get to the heart of the strategy that Mel Robbins developed through years of research in behavioral psychology. The change you need to make isn't complex, but it requires emotional discipline. You need to stop reacting emotionally to provocations, dramas, and manipulative behaviors. This means you will no longer engage in circular arguments that lead nowhere. You will no longer repeatedly justify yourself to people who are clearly not interested in understanding your perspective. You will no longer try to prove your point to someone who has already decided you are wrong, regardless of the facts presented. Instead, you maintain basic politeness and mutual respect, but completely remove your emotional involvement from the situation. When someone tries to drag you into an unnecessary conflict, you respond clearly and briefly, without letting yourself be dragged into the drama. Your responses become factual, direct, and devoid of the emotional charge that previously fueled these problematic interactions. You don't engage in provocations. You don't take the bait when someone tries to arouse your anger, frustration, or need to defend yourself. You simply observe the behavior, recognize the manipulation attempt, and consciously choose not to participate in the emotional game being proposed. This approach works because people with toxic tendencies feed specifically on emotional reaction. They thrive on chaos, confusion, and their need to explain and justify themselves. When this source of emotional energy is removed, their interest in maintaining the interaction simply disappears. It's like removing sugar from the diet of someone addicted to sweets. Without the reward they seek, they naturally look for satisfaction elsewhere. The scientific explanation behind this strategy is fascinating and is rooted in how our brains learn and adapt. Mel Robbins explains that the human brain learns primarily through consequences, not through verbal explanations. When you constantly react to someone's provocations, you are inadvertently rewarding that behavior with attention and emotional energy. The person's brain interprets this reaction as confirmation that the strategy is working. Conversely, when you stop providing the emotional reward they seek, their brain registers that this approach is no longer generating the desired results. Like all human beings, toxic people also follow the principle of least effort. They will naturally gravitate towards behaviors that give them the most return with the least investment. This dynamic fundamentally changes when you establish silent but firm boundaries. Before, there was a completely unequal emotional exchange where you invested energy trying to resolve conflicts that the other person had no genuine interest in resolving. Now, there is a clear and non-negotiable limit on how much of your emotional energy is available for these unproductive interactions. It's important to understand that this is not emotional coldness or cruelty. It's emotional intelligence applied strategically. You are not being hostile or vindictive. You are simply making a conscious choice about where and how to invest your limited emotional energy. You are prioritizing your own mental health and emotional well-being, which is not only your right, but your responsibility to yourself. When you implement this strategy for the first time, it's perfectly normal to feel discomfort. You may experience feelings of guilt, as if you were being selfish or insensitive. It may feel like you are abandoning someone who needs your help or understanding. There may be an almost irresistible urge to revert to old patterns, especially when the person notices the change and intensifies their attempts to provoke an emotional reaction. This initial discomfort you feel isn't a sign that you're doing something wrong. In fact, it's quite the opposite. This discomfort is evidence that you're breaking conditioned patterns that have been established over years, perhaps decades. You've been socially programmed to please, to explain, to justify yourself, to absorb other people's emotions as if they were your own responsibility. This conditioning likely began in childhood, where you learned that keeping the peace and avoiding conflict was safer than setting firm boundaries. You may have grown up in an environment where your emotional needs were secondary to the needs of others, where you learned that your worth was connected to your ability to make other people feel good, even at the expense of your own well-being. Maintaining your boundary at this crucial moment of discomfort is literally the turning point between continuing in old patterns that drain your energy and establishing a new paradigm where your emotional energy is protected and consciously invested. It is at this moment that you need to remember that setting healthy boundaries is not an act of selfishness. It's an act of self-preservation necessary for any healthy and sustainable relationship. After you manage to maintain this new attitude through the initial period of discomfort, something remarkable begins to happen. People who previously consumed your energy with unnecessary drama naturally begin to drift away from your life. Superficial relationships that were based solely on what you could give or do for others begin to dissolve naturally. Invitations to participate in gossip, conflicts, and toxic situations stop coming your way. More importantly, this emotional space that is freed up when you remove toxic relationships creates opportunity for genuinely healthy connections to flourish. People who value relationships based on mutual respect, reciprocity, and joint growth begin to appear more frequently in your life. You discover that when you are not constantly drained by problematic interactions, you have much more energy and enthusiasm to invest in relationships that truly add value to your existence. You may also discover that some people you thought were genuinely toxic were simply people who didn't know how to relate to you in a healthy way, because you hadn't previously established clear boundaries. When you demonstrate through actions, not words, that you value your own emotional energy, some people naturally adjust and begin to interact with you in a more respectful and constructive way. Leave a comment saying, "I choose my peace," because this statement strengthens your commitment to this new pattern of relating to yourself and others. Every time you reaffirm this choice, you are training your brain to prioritize your own emotional stability as the foundation from which all other relationships are built. The transformation that happens when you consistently implement this strategy goes far beyond simply removing problematic people from your life. You develop an unwavering confidence in your ability to protect your own emotional energy. You stop feeling like a victim of circumstances or other people's behaviors because you know you always have the power to choose how to respond to any situation. You also develop a much more refined ability to identify toxic behaviors early on, before they have a chance to establish themselves as patterns in your relationships. You become more selective about where you invest your energy. more discerning about the types of interactions you allow into your life, and more confident in your ability to navigate complex relationships without losing your own identity in the process. This skill extends to all areas of your life. At work, you stop taking on responsibilities that aren't yours just to avoid conflict. In family relationships, you learn to love people without absorbing their problems as if they were your own. In friendships, you develop the ability to be supportive without becoming an emotional dumping ground for others' frustrations. The most powerful thing about this approach is that it requires zero cooperation from the other person. You don't need a toxic person to admit they're being toxic. You don't need them to understand your point of view or agree with your choices. You don't need a dramatic conversation where you explain why you're changing the dynamics of the relationship. You simply change your own behavior and allow the natural consequences to unfold. This is profoundly liberating because it means you always have power over your own experience, regardless of how other people choose to behave. You are no longer held hostage by other people's moods, dramas, or emotional needs. You become the conscious architect of your own emotional experience. The key to long-term success with this strategy is understanding that it requires consistent practice. Like any new skill, establishing healthy emotional boundaries becomes easier and more natural the more you practice. Initially, you may need conscious reminders not to react emotionally to provocations. Over time, this balanced response becomes your natural and automatic reaction. It's also important to understand that this approach doesn't mean becoming emotionally closed off or inaccessible to people who genuinely deserve your energy and attention. You're not becoming cold or insensitive. You're simply becoming more strategic about where and how your emotional energy is invested. You're learning the difference between being empathetic and being an emotional dumping ground, between being supportive and being a savior. You don't need to confront toxic people with elaborate speeches about their problematic behaviors. You don't need to explain in detail why you're changing how you interact with them. You simply need to stop feeding the behaviors that drain your energy through your own emotional reaction. A single change, removing your automatic emotional reaction to manipulative situations, is enough to completely transform who chooses to remain around you and how those people choose to interact with you. When you consciously choose yourself, when you prioritize your own emotional stability, the environment around you naturally reorganizes itself to reflect this new reality. People who can't or won't respect your emotional boundaries simply can no longer find a reason to remain in your life. They naturally gravitate toward other people who are still willing to participate in the dramas and conflicts they thrive on creating. This isn't magic or coincidence. It's simply the practical application of emotional maturity in action. When you understand that you have complete control over your own emotional energy and that you can consciously choose where to invest that energy, you free yourself from the prison of trying to control or change other people. You stop wasting energy trying to make toxic people behave differently and start investing that energy in creating the life and relationships you truly want to have.